You know, for the past almost week, I've been looking at this thing, trying to think of what it reminds me of, and I can only settle on that of a highly disfigured baby seal with wings.
ShinRobjira.
Giant Mothra is actually quite tiny, at least until we get to her wings, which, yeah, slightly over 12 inches tall. And that wingspan? Forget about it. Look at this. My god. Yeah. And as far as paint and detail goes, this might be a new record for me. Mothra is rather simple, and honestly, I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, this thing was 25 bucks. We'll see some nice shading across her limbs and her body, of course. Nothing crazier to write home about, but it's nice that there's some differentiation to really break the whole thing up so she doesn't look like a winged turd. We do get a bit of a spooch over here on her thigh, looking like leaky marker syndrome. But yo, for the most part, I really don't have any complaints. The bombastically loud whites and blues for her eye area are just so very nice. Might not be 100% screen accurate to what she looked like in the movie, but this is Playmates. You know, we don't gotta be all SHMA on it. And I really do like how the mold that they did for this figure actually accentuates upon her antennae on top of her head. As even with the high-end collector line figures, Mothra's antennae have been really hard. Mostly because they really don't stick up. They are kind of swooshed back. But on top of that, it's nice to see some details for those as well. Ah, another spooch. Yeah, this bakery accent of a highlight on top of her head really does help those two. They are discernible pieces of her design. A lot like her mouth, too. That being said, we'll see some shading on both sides of Mothra's limbs, not just on one, which is a nice change of pace. Her chest/neck arms are going to be painted. And yes, that is some material scratching/rub. I can't control that, it just happens. And for whatever reason, it just and only happens on that arm, as the rest of the arms and even the legs don't have a lick of that. So, it happens with your copy. No, it's not only you. Now, the last thing to talk about in this category are going to be the decals on Mothra's wings. And yes, they're not painted on, they're not detailed on, or anything like that. They're very much plastic-covered stickers on a very thin plastic base. But is that really such a bad thing? I don't think so. The decals are nice and protected by that plastic. They might peel off towards the joints over time. We'll discuss that as we move into articulation in a bit. But Mothra's overall appearance and just how the figure looks overall, both up close and from far away, I don't think this is an issue, and I actually kind of like the thin plastic outline around the wings too. I really don't have any complaints. I think this looks perfectly fine. And for 25 bucks, I think it looks better than I was originally expecting it to. And yes, both sides of the wings will feature this decal. It is not just on one side, it is not just on one wing, it is on all sides of all four wings. I appreciate that. I like it. Paint, detail, and decals are going to get 3 solid stars. 25 bucks for a giant Mothra figure. This is a godsend. Okay, maybe not a godsend, but it's really friggin' good, and this figure is fun. I can feel the fun. It's like from that one video essay where the guy says you can actually hear Belle's voice actress in Beauty and the Beast smile as she sings. This is what I feel here. The fun emanating from the design and the way this thing looks. Playmates had fun. They were smiling as they sung as they made this. Anyway, size comparisons. Shokugan, movie, limited movie. Playmates Standard Godzilla evolved in Kong with Infinity Fabric. Playmates Standard Scar King in Shimo. Playmates Giant Godzilla evolved. Mega Kong, Mega Godzilla, Giant GVK Godzilla, Giant GVK Kong, HG Finger Puppets. Now this stand is going to be Giant Mothra's sole accessory, and while that might upset some, I think it's really not all that bad. Plus it's simple. Peg hole, meet peg. Simple and clean is the way that you're making me feel tonight. And Mothra can go that far back and very, very, very far forward. That almost stopped my audio recording, holy Christ. And not for nothing, it's quite sturdy. She hasn't fallen over once unless I made her. Solid star in terms of accessory inclusion because this outwardly affects the health of this here figure. So in terms of articulation, we are going to get hinges at Mothra's arms. They will be able to swivel all the way around. Yes, that's right.
all of them, Mothra's legs can swivel all the way around as well. You can effectively get Mothra into a splat pose. Now we can talk about Mothra's wings. Ratchet joints. Yes, they have them. It's just the Playmates version of a ratchet joint. So be careful. Yeah, I would recommend if you're going to articulate Mothra's wings, you kinda put the pressure at the joint itself and not at the wing, because the wings are flimsy. And I feel like just doing this, you're gonna ask for stress marks or something in the future, maybe. Plus, when you bend the wing, you run the risk of those decals popping off. So yeah, try not to do that. But yes, they can go down. They can go right back up. They can hold a center pose. They can actually swivel all the way around. Jesus. And I'm pretty sure we can get a nice flapping pose out of this? Oh yeah, we've got Mothra in a deformed X-Wing pose. Let's go. Okay, that's a bit better. And when it comes to the bigger wings, I am going to recommend you do the same thing as I suggested with the smaller wings, because these are much more top heavy. They have to accommodate for a much bigger size. So treat your giant Moth with care, and she should be just fine. And thank God these wings can move upwards, because jeez, crow. Look at that wingspan. My God. Now I'm gonna kick myself in the keister if I don't make mention of this. When I said the wings were flimsy, I really did mean it. If you're going to pose this figure and put it on a shelf and not touch it for a couple of weeks to a month or more, try this. Get the smaller wings up as high as they'll go. Swivel them back a bit. Up, back. And kind of get the bigger wings to a point where they're kind of leaning on the smaller wings, even if you have to move them both together. That way they kind of look like this. That way when you have it on the shelf and you don't touch it for a while, the Playmates quality ratchet joints won't degrade over time, and it'll save you a bit more shelf space as opposed to keeping her wings down all the time. Unless you place her on top of a mega Godzilla you have or a giant Godzilla you have and just drape the wings down, that'll probably work too. I'm not saying anything has happened with this figure with me so far. It is merely a suggestion, and it's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to be giving articulation a solid star because it's damn good. Hinges and swivels all the way around. Ratchet joints at the wings. If these things weren't ratcheted, these things would be like this all the friggin' time. Go slow, Rob. Go slow. Yeah, they'd be like this and wouldn't really need a stand for it. Because at that point, just tie it up to the ceiling, drape it over a Godzilla, call it a day. Anyway, size comparisons. I meant to say posability. We already did size comparisons, right? I hope so. Posability-wise, it feels like Playmates was having the time of their lives designing this figure. I can actually feel the fun they had making this. I mean, before we even saw this, it's like, what if they make a giant Mothra? You immediately think, okay, well, how is Playmates going to handle that? And I think this exceeds absolutely every thought I ever had. I mean, ratcheted wings, swivel and hinged arms and legs. Like, dude, yes. If I was going to be picky, though, I would say I do wish the stand was a bit more mobile, just to lend Mothra to more flight-ready poses. But this thing isn't exactly sponge cake. It's got a bit of heft to it. So I can understand why they went with something static and solid in terms of the stand. But other than that, I think Playmates Giant Mothra is a must. Yeah, go get it if you can find it, because finding Mothra anything from Playmates has been Either way, I think Playmates produced an absolute banger. It's cool to finally have an articulated Mothra figure that's not like that. Plus, it's posable and it looks pretty good for its price point. I recommend it highly. Just a pain in the ass that finding Playmates Mothra anything is so expensive. Or impossible. But anyway, I have been ShinRobjira. So hope you all enjoyed this video. And when next we meet, I mean, it could be Movie Monster Series Little Godzilla or Godzilla 1994. Yeah, I've got 3 weeks of scheduled content that still hasn't been released, and some of them are pushing almost a month old. Until next time, everybody. Social media, I am on Blue Sky, TikTok, ShinRobjira_. That is me. Good night.